Today we're talking about a mighty faith. And one of my favorite stories about faith is the story of Jesus and Peter walking on water. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you might not. This is the New Revised Rachel version of the story. I told some of you in class this week, there's so many different versions of the Bible. My version's just as right as any of the others, at least the ones that are in English. So, Jesus and an assortment of disciples are doing the thing that they normally do, right? Jesus is doing the teaching and preaching thing, and it got towards the end of the day. And so Jesus says, well, okay, well, y'all just get in the, he probably did say y'all, right? So anyway, so y'all just get in the boat and head across the lake to the next destination. I'm going to go up the mountain to pray. So they did, right? So disciples, they're in the boat, they're going along, doing their thing. And then and then Jesus, he gets done doing his prayer time. He comes down. What does he do? Well, he's like, oh, there they are out in the lake. So he starts walking over. So the disciples they're in the boat and they go, what is this? Because if you didn't know what was coming, that would be pretty freaky, right? Like you're in a boat and you see something coming towards you, apparently over the lake. You might think it was a ghost or something, right? That would be not what you'd expect. So they're having a cow. And so Jesus is like, guys, relax. It's just me. And Peter, he's in the boat and he says, Lord, if it's you, call me to you and I will come. And so Jesus says, all right, come on. So now Peter's gotten himself in a little conundrum. Because now he has to get out of the boat, right? We've been there? So, and all the disciples are there watching. So it's not like he can get out. Okay, so he takes a step. And he takes another, gets out. And he starts walking. And my guess is he gets to about step number 3. When all of a sudden he realizes what's going on. He starts to freak out. Starts to sink. And Jesus goes, oh, Peter. And he grabs him, takes his hand, pulls him up, gets him back in the boat, and off they go. See, that's not the way you knew the story, was it? But there's a lot of really good stuff in this story about faith and what we can learn from it. Number 1, what's the first thing Jesus does? He goes away up the mountain to pray by himself. So, step number 1, taking time away to take care of yourself. We hear it over and over, and yet so often we forget to take the time. Not just the prayer and meditation time that you take during the week, during each day, which in and of itself is something that some people forget to do. I've definitely been that person. But to actually say, today is my Sabbath. Today is my day to do whatever rests and restores me. Or this afternoon, if it's not a whole day, is my Sabbath. And then maybe another afternoon and another time in the week is my Sabbath. It's my time to, as in the book, The Prayer of Your Life, she has a whole section on taking care of yourself, taking time away. So it must be important if she put it in there, right? It must be important if it's kind of like said over and over again in pretty much every spiritual text you get through. Take a bubble bath. Do art. Do whatever it is that is go for, walk by the mountains, be in nature, whatever it is, the thing that fulfills your heart. And don't take that time to be distracted by all the other things, but just to be, right? So you have to take the time away. So yes, you just, you have your prayer meditation time, but that's not enough. You also have to take your spiritual renewal time. All of us do. We are so much better clear about who we are and what we're supposed to be doing when we do these things. Because even, as she says in the book, often when we go on vacation, we're so scheduled to go see this, and we have to do all the stuff we have to do, It's not even a vacation. I mean, we saw a whole bunch of stuff, but where was the rest? Which is important too. So that's step one. That's one great thing we can learn from this story. So another great thing we can learn from this story, right? So we've got Peter over here in the boat, and he's not alone. He's in the boat with his buddies. They've already been through stuff together, and they're going to be through more stuff together. And so even though now he's gotten himself in this situation where he's going to have to do something scary. Anybody been there before? Scary. He's got his friends backing him up. And that is also a wonderful thing to know that we have. Right? We've talked in the class about praying for one another. And this is a really important thing to know. Praying for one another is not saying, please God fix my friend or do this thing for my friend. It's praying for one another can mean I know the truth of who you are, even when you forget. It's being a lighthouse for one another when, sometimes we're in the midst of our stuff. We forget that we're smart and that we have the wisdom and that we are healthy or that freedom is who we are. All of those, whatever it is that we might be in the midst of, that we may not be as good at holding the vigil for that, that's what our friends are for. Our spiritual partners, our prayer partners can hold the light for us and hold the truth for us, even if it's not theirs to get out of the boat, because we all have our mission, our things that are ours to do. Maybe that's not ours to do, but we can hold that vision for one another, right? So that's another important part of the story, is that we need those people who got our back. And so the next thing that happens in the story is Peter says yes. He says yes to a calling. Now, we could just say, okay, well, it was Jesus who called him. Or we could see that as the symbolic of a calling of what is really his to do. So maybe it's to become a teacher, or maybe it's to do, so it could be a calling like what is your life, like to be your career. But it could also be, maybe it's you're called to start a business, or maybe you're called to start a nonprofit to make a difference about something that matters to you. Or maybe you're really feeling the urge to make a big change in your life that has to do with your personal or spiritual development. It could be a lot of different things. But when we talk about in the song about raising the veil, this is about taking away the separation that we feel there might be between us and all that is. And so when we take that walk in this story towards Jesus, but in the bigger picture towards whatever is truly ours to do, when we take that step, that's us clearing whatever might be blocking us from seeing what's ours to do, right? So more towards our truth. We're always, hopefully, walking more towards the truth of who we really are and who we really are here to be. And so Peter starts walking, right? He gets out of the boat because everybody's watching, so he sort of has to. That's one of the reasons why it's good to set goals and tell your friends what your goals are, because they can help kick you out of the boat, right? So he starts walking. He's doing his thing. He's focused on the goal, right? Focused. Off he goes. And then, like I said, step number 3. And haven't we all been there? You get distracted, right? If he'd stayed completely focused on his goal, probably would have been just fine, but he got distracted by worry, by fear, by, soccer practice. Oh, we got to go watch the Iditarod. Oh, wait, whatever, like life has happening all around us all the time, and that's not a bad thing. Being present in our life is a good thing to be, being present with the people around us. But can we be present with that and stay focused on our goal? And stay focused on where it is that we know we're meant to do, whatever the goal of our life is at that moment. And there will continue to be new ones after that, right? So that's what having faith is about. And, so we get distracted, and then because we have the people in the boat who are cheering us on, who know what our goal is, they remind us, and Jesus is part of that group of reminding him, remind us who we are, get us back on track, and off we go, right? And we just do this cycle over and over and over again. And that's what a mighty faith is about. Because, see, Peter represents faith not just in walking on water type of faith. Peter represents all kinds of faith. And he reminds us, because if you read about Peter in the Bible, he goes from really getting it, walking on water, to really not getting it. He goes back and forth. This is what he does. And it's kind of comforting because that's kind of how I think most of us live our lives. We really get it and we're like on fire, sizzling with knowing our truth. And then, we get a letter from the IRS in the mail and all of a sudden we're distracted. Or whatever, So these things happen, and then the trick is not to, it can be a speed bump, or it can be a detour, right? And so if we let those things be speed bumps and not let them be detours, then we can continue on that path, that walk of faith. So what does having this kind of walk look like in a modern life? Well, I'll tell you a story of some friends of mine. Justin was having he had a job, things were going well, then he got his offer for this other company that looked like it was going to be really great, doing the same kind of work, but better, all the stuff. And so he said, yes, great. So he went off and started doing that. But in the meantime, as well as like taking classes at Unity and getting more kind of grounded in principle, he was saying to his fiance, who's now his wife, I really could work for myself. I could do this better. Da, 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 da. So that was kind of what he was in, even though he was working for this company and he had the benefits and all that. He was like, I could do this better. So a week before Christmas, he hadn't even had this job very long, he gets the call. They're laying off a bunch of people, including him. And, so there's the frantic call to your spiritual buddies. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We lost the job right before Christmas. This is a big deal, right? Because there's like kids and everything and Christmas. So after a day of what are we going to do? He said, well, you've been saying you wanted to start your own business and work for yourself. What better time than now, right? And so the good news is his fiance, his job at that time was working with entrepreneurs to start businesses. So she really knows her stuff. And so they started a business. And he started doing the stuff and, started procuring the equipment. And of course, when you're starting from nothing, it's pretty hard to, but they started making it work and making it work. And they continued to walk the path and walk the path. And a year or two later, Stephanie quit her job and worked for the company. And now the two of them support themselves working for the company that they started because he got laid off from a job that he kept talking about not wanting. Interesting. So that's what a walk of faith can. Now, that's the short version of the story. There was lots of hiccups and speed bumps along the way, as you can imagine, and vendors who are taking too long to pay their bills and all of that stuff. And yet they just kept focused, kept doing what was theirs to do. That is a mighty walk of faith in a person's life. And so I don't want any of us to go away from here saying, okay, well, that's good that they managed to do it, or they could do it, but, well, you know, I don't. You just keep at it. How do we build a life of faith? Faith is the perceiving power of the mind to shape substance. That's the Charles Fillmore definition of faith. The perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. So that means we see our goal in our minds, right? And then we bring it into being. We create it, shape substance. So we just keep walking. We take the time away to get clear, to have the time of revelation or understanding or forgiveness, so that, because, you know, if we're holding on to stuff, that can really get in the way, of course, of seeing what we want to do, what we do as our next step. Can kind of convolute things some. So we take the time away to wash our hearts clean, to wash our minds clean, and we continue to do that practice on a consistent basis. We take care of ourselves. We have the friends, the spiritual community that supports us, knows who we are in truth. I am light. That's all you need to know. I am God. And we'll hold that and reflect that back to us in the moments of joy and in the moments that we forget. And then when we know clearly what's ours to do, we start walking and start taking those steps. And when we get distracted, we make sure that it's a speed bump and not a detour. And even if it's a big speed bump, we continue to hold truth to that vision, knowing that sometimes the way we thought it was going to happen isn't the way it's going to happen, but something even better can happen. So just stay focused on the essence of what you want to have come forth. And so it can be scary, right, when we're walking over the water, because, I mean, it doesn't seem very solid sometimes. When we're in the place between here and there, it's scary, doesn't seem solid, and yet it's worth it. We have to believe that it's worth it. If we really know in our hearts that it's worth it, it's totally doable, totally crossable. There you go. So I invite you to remember this walk of faith. You know, get your own boat. I've done this talk with an actual boat. Get out of the boat. Find your goal and get out of the boat and start walking. Because you're never going to get there if you stay in the boat. So, I go out and have a mighty faith.